Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Talking with Friends. I am, I guess, your host, or at least the steerer of the ship, Josh Shernoff, and I am joined by the steerees of the ship. First, it's my brother, Mr. Fred Shernoff. Fred, welcome back to Talking with Friends.
Good to be here.
Good to have you here. Next up, he's a magician. And after that, we've got Matt. No, next up, it's Calvin Tan. Calvin Tan is here. Calvin, welcome.
Welcome. Good to be here. Hope everyone had a happy holiday.
Well, thank you for welcoming me.
The host gets such little love.
It was a great holiday, which
right.
included Talking with Friends, Giving, which got an absurd number of views on Fight TV. We thank you for that. I was expecting at least 3. At most 5, and we kind of blew it out of the water there. But last, but certainly not least, unless we're talking about Wi-Fi connection, Mr. Matt Mangle.
You got a problem with Verizon? Take it up with them, sir.
Fun
it's
fact,
good to be here.
I do have a problem with Verizon.
No. Up yours. Listen to me.
Thank you.
Lowe's sold out of 2x4s. Thanks to me. You.
Thanks to you. Wait a minute.
And Ludwig Borga.
So that based on Talking with Friendsgiving, Matt Mangle has the prices of 2x4s have gone up.
Yep,
All thanks to Matt Mangle.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan has to use a foam one that he used in WCW. So,
well, no, hey, all kidding aside, awesome to have you guys here. Happy New Year, everyone. Unless this happens to air prior to New Year's, depends on how much stuff we talk about and how much footage needs to get edited in. But
We're in that window where you can say Happy New Year.
Yeah.
A little before, a little after. It works.
Well, it's December 28th as we record this, so who knows when this is going to air.
That's reasonable.
But, hey, if it's before December 30th, check out the Shernoff Awards on Fight, which feature Manglepiece Theater.
I'm selling it, Josh.
All right,
you
sell
familiar
it.
with selling? You
Sell
familiar
it.
with selling?
Oh,
Fred, what's with the ladder behind you, sir? You got a high spot coming up?
You know, I'm hardcore.
And you know what else was hardcore?
Manscaped.
One Night Stand 2006. ECW One Night Stand 2006. The WWE brought ECW back in 2005 for a one-night-only event, which was an enormous success. Of course, that was off of the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD. So they said, hey, it's so nice, let's do it twice. We'll bring it back, but this time we're going to bring the whole damn thing back. We're going to bring ECW back with One Night Stand 2, which kind of makes no sense whatsoever. And we're then going to bring the ECW brand back. Why do I bring that up? Because it was around that time I thought, well, if ECW can come back for One Night Stand, why couldn't its equal in success and notoriety and fandom counterpart, the TWF, come back for One Night Stand? And that is what brings us to the final incarnation of the TWF. So it was, I believe, the summer of 2006. I do remember sitting, I have a picture somewhere that I'll have to see if I can dig up of Fred and Matt sitting upstairs at Starbucks.
That's right.
Our first meeting.
Together a business plan.
Putting together a
But
business plan.
you want to jump back real quick before we get into the
Let's do it.
organization of that.
I thought it was just such a good transition from the hardcore and like right transition. In. Yeah. Oh crap! I forgot to put my beard on today.
So we.
Hold on. You used Manscaped on your face, didn't you? Is that what you did, Josh?
I can neither confirm nor deny. No, I actually did not use it on my face. Although I do wonder. I bet it would feel fine. Why couldn't you? I just wouldn't recommend using it downstairs and then
upstairs.
Going upstairs.
Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, so.
NBA Baracus.
We left off with the Morad era came to a close in 2003, and we really all believed we were done at that point as far as the TWF. But
that was it.
Coming out of that, Josh, you went on the road with Big Lou a little bit. If you want to talk about that brief rise and fall.
Yo, it's Big Lou. So when the TWF ended in 2003, I kind of had that work shoot promo with Lou where I talked about how it was time for Lou to head out onto the indies and do, and be the star that we know he could be. Unfortunately, Lou didn't have a car. He had no means to get anywhere. I'm not even entirely sure he had a phone to make calls to try and book himself or had a computer. I don't know what Lou's situation was other than a knapsack.
And soybeans.
His belongings and soybeans in his pocket at all times. But the man who would one day become the Golden Lord, Big Lou, I basically said to him, I said, hey, man, you should go out in the indies. I'll manage you. And he goes, nah, yo, dude, man, we should be a tag team. And I was like, tag team wrestling seems a little bit easier than singles wrestling. So sure, I'll go. And I always had that nervousness of getting out there, being out, going to the indies on my own and that whole process, which is what always led me back to the TWF. I was always nervous to kind of go out on my own, out of my comfort zone. So I thought, well, if I can bring Big Lou with me, Matt Mangle was not going to be doing it. John Brody, we touched on last time, had kind of disappeared. We knew that Big Papa was one sunburn away from not being able to make it. Yeah. So I said, all right, let's do it. Let's go out onto the indies. And we did a show. I don't remember who it was for. I think it may have been related to Fat El Kake, martial law. I think it may have been connected to him in some way. Yeah. So the first show that we did
WX something or other?
I don't remember what it was called, but it was...
I can picture it, but yeah.
So the first show we did was outdoors. And it was me and Lou and the aforementioned Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Scott Fowler. And we were all hanging out, and I took my TWF shirt, or not my TWF shirt, my Superstar shirt. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to kind of cut this down. What today is referred to as the Broski Cut that Matt Cardona does all the time. I thought I'd give that kind of like, go for more of like a tank top type thing or whatever it was. Well, it was a disaster. It did not turn out right. I put it on, and it was not something I was willing to wear. So fun fact, in that match, I am wearing, for the only time in my entire career, in an outdoor event, I believe it was the only time I ever wrestled outdoors as well, I am wearing my tall boots, my blue knee pads, and my short tights that went over the long tights that I wore in 2003. I did not wear the long tights. I went full-on short Hulk Hogan style trunks for this one match. And never did it again. It did not look good. But my thought was, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to go shirtless. I'm going to have a whole new look for myself. But then when it came time to go shirtless, I was like, I forgot to work out. So I asked Scott Fowler to borrow his black tank top that he had been wearing because he had also at the time not yet really worked out. So, That happened. Then we went on to do a charity show. And that was a battle royal, which we didn't get paid for because they're like, oh, sorry, brother. The house was kind of light, even though it was like packed. They'll get us next time. But I remember I lost in the first one in a roll up to cheerleader Melissa, I believe was her name, who went on to have a very sexual career in wrestling. Google her. It's the only way I could describe it. Just incredibly sexual in nature. But Big Lou also competed that night. I don't know what he did, but I do know in the back he spent a lot of time talking to Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Talking about getting advice, whatever. I don't know they ever followed any of it, but getting advice from Hacksaw, who was super, super cool. Then we had the Battle Royal show was a lot of fun. Scott Fowler was on that one as well. And Scott and I actually worked a couple spots in the ring, and I did as much of the Jerry Lawler hang on to the bottom rope as I could. And then we actually did one spot where I think it was Scott and somebody else grabbed me and like swung me off of it, and I bumped and got up and then got eliminated. But it was a lot of fun, actually. It was really cool to do. And we came out to, Lou and I came out to the Work It remix by Justin Timberlake and I don't know who else, but it was Back in Black. It was like Justin Timberlake had like remixed, but using Back in Black, which I thought was kind of a cool, like we were paying homage to Lee Harrison Styles. And but
could have used the manager, but you know,
could have. You were probably too busy being above it. No, so that was it. And that kind of died out. We called ourselves the Showstoppers. We had plans to get gear. We were going to get gear made, and it just became one of those things where like, I don't know if I didn't want to do it or Lou was like, you know, like wasn't available for one of the times or whatever. And it just,
I think you were trying to figure out how you were going to stay involved in the business, what the best approach was, because you tried out for the Ring of Honor school.
So there was that, and that was, I want to say 2006 as well. I tried out for the Ring of Honor school. I was in terrible shape. Terrible shape. That was around, I got to say, that was probably 2006.
Sounds all right, yeah.
And I tried out for Austin Aries and got accepted, got the call from Austin Aries. We'd like to bring in, and it was at that moment that I was like, well, they accept anyone. Because I was so blown up. We didn't do a single thing in the ring. It was all calisthenics, and I was in terrible shape. But I remember being in the car, getting the call from him, and just being like, yeah, you know what? Now's not really like a great time. I think I kind of like it. And I just, at that point in time, I was over it. I was burnt out at the idea of it. And I just felt that it was time to kind of move on. And I had those phases throughout my career where I just kind of felt like, okay, this isn't working out. Continuing in this path is not going to work. The problem is I would always then just be like, oh, I missed the business. Let me go back to the exact same path I was following before, you know? And it wasn't until 2018 where I said, let's get back in the business and follow a different path. That thankfully has worked out for me. But then I remember I was mentioning it to you, Fred, and you and I started talking about it. And I mentioned
we always talked. We always
yeah.
All of us would get together and we talked about, there was a lot of talk about doing like a one night show. And there was various different things we tossed around. There was several, I remember Sassy was big on, he kept going, if you do one night, it's going to be fantastic. If you go for night number 2, you're going to fail.
No,
really? Was he the other way around?
He was the other way around. Okay. You were the one who said if we do one night, it'll be fantastic. If we do the other. Don't give Mike Green credit, because Mike Green, that son of a bitch, is the one who, right. I mean, he just straight
up you up for money.
We'll get there. It's in the old notes here.
It wasn't a pea shooter. Sorry.
No. So no, he really tore my asshole on that one, on that suplex.
Atkins the shit out of that. Yeah. Okay.
Gas with oily discharge. Listen. We're not getting into that. But anyway, so Calvin Tan's already drinking. So
we were talking about that.
So we're talking about, and I mentioned it to Mike because I started reaching out to all of the past TWF homegrown guys and everything like that, and we're like, you know, we had this vision of like, we'll do this big thing. We'll bring back Billy Bob even to make an appearance and wave from ringside. And it was like,
did you realize what you just said?
Yeah.
How awful it sounds today.
It sounds terrible.
It sounded worse.
It sounded pretty bad back then too.
We were in the bubble. We didn't know.
We were in that bubble. That bubble that every promotion, every promoter from WWE to AEW to Ring of Honor.
Well, not anymore.
You know, so anyway, Mike Green was like, if you're gonna do it, you have to bring it back. What? Why would you put out all this effort? Why would you put out all this effort to not bring it back? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you just bring it back?
And he turns into Yoda on caffeine.
Bring it back, you will. So anyway,
So around that time, I don't want to jump in too much, but
oh please, I've been
I'm gonna
talking
be
for
jumping it all,
for
Fred.
17 minutes.
before we made any decision to actually bring it back, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like I gave Mike Green credit he didn't deserve. But we took a trip. I think just for the hell of it, we took a trip to Mark Mast to the dungeon. With Dave Sagan, I think around that time, right?
Yes. So that was in the summer of 2006.
Okay. Yep.
We went with Dave Sagan. We went with Andrew Sagan, who would later become Vortex. Well, who had previously been Vortex and
the
would once
once
again
and future
become
Vortex.
Vortex, yeah. And not the Vortex on Fred's bidet. So have you tried it since last episode? Oh, you should go try it right now while we're on the air.
Oh. He is
off camera.
He's sitting down. He is. He's sitting down. He's at pain tolerance.
So we went in the summer of 2006. We went to Mast.
Calvin, were you there for that?
Calvin was not there for that.
Don't think I was there for that.
No.
No.
Biz was filming.
Yeah.
We got a lot of footage of
This
that.
one where Biz injured himself.
That's a good question.
Maybe.
I think that was earlier.
Ended up on his ankle.
That must have been early. No, that was early back in the day.
That was when we first met them and all.
This is when there's mushrooms at 95 degrees. And you know how mushrooms are grown? Yeah. Sorry. Take it.
So also, this was the... I slept in a little bit late. It was time to go. And I said, don't have time for breakfast, but let's just stop at Wawa on the way. I'll grab myself some hard-boiled eggs and a Red Bull. That should be good. There's your energy. There's your protein. And I believe we've mentioned this on the show once before. I spent the majority of that time in the porta potty that had not been cleaned in a fortnight.
In the lion's den of Mark Mast.
It was Mark. I'm literally sitting above open air Mast feces. That's it.
It's like a conjuring.
Fun fact.
You know?
Fun fact. Oh, Calvin Tan.
You don't want to do that.
Fun fact. Yeah, that would have blown the whole place up. I did not ever. That is how much it. No.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Did it retreat?
No. My stomach was so upset by what I had done.
It refused to.
But I didn't have to. I didn't have to. It was just like not a good situation, but I thought I had to. I wish more than anything that I had gone and just my brains out for 20 minutes. Because then I would not have had to spend the rest of the day going back multiple times. I didn't go back and keep shitting. And I'm sorry, Mangle, if that's what you thought was happening. I was going back trying to, and it was not happening. And the worst part is not that I had to go back, but because had I one would hope that my own scent would have overpowered the scent that was already there, in which case I would have been able to breathe easier.
That's like saying you're going to escape a black hole, Josh. It ain't going to happen.
No.
Anyway.
No. So, Fred, where were we? So, yeah. I don't know. That was Dave Sagan's first time in the ring. And he was having some physical ailments as well.
Yeah. He just was just posing for pictures a lot of the time. And we were just like, man, we kind of thought he was the better than that. And he wasn't, but it turned out that he was in, he was really hurting from something. I don't know. And so he actually was much better than what we saw.
Some sort of, we'll let it an undisclosed injury. But he wasn't doing well. So the next time we went back, we're like, oh, okay, this is what we expected out of Dave Sagan.
Yeah.
Cause Dave was a dude who he was the jackass generation, right? Like he was
also what is interesting about Dave is that he was Lou in some ways, Lou watched the early the early teenage wrestling
Dave and Lou
foundation
were
a little
both
bit,
at Beyond the
but-
Grave.
But Dave was like almost second generation in a way that he had been a kid watching.
He was second generation. Because Andrew Sagan was actually his father.
No, I'm saying is that he was a child watching us as a fan, and
We called him Vortex Maivia when he came in.
Now he was actually old enough to wrestle. So that we never had that before. Like someone who kind of grew up watching us.
That is true. That was a very weird thing if you think about it, because Dave did watch us. If you go back to Beyond the Grave, I mean, he was not even a teenager yet at that point. And so you look at Dave then watching you, Fred, and watching me wrestling and Mangle wrestling, watching Calvin come out as the manager there and everything. And you can only imagine from a little kid's point of view, he's probably like, holy crap. Like, I remember that I looked at like Mangle as like, dude, this like grown ass man, because he was just bigger and a couple years older. So I can only imagine for Dave, he was probably like, these are real pro wrestlers. These are real wrestlers who I also happen to kind of know through my brother and whatnot. But to go from that to then being able to be a part of it I know it was a cool thing for him, but it was really cool for us to kind of feel like we're finally like bringing someone in here who was he loved the TWF and always wanted to be a part of it. So now he was getting ready to get that opportunity. So we're there. We do have some great footage that we'll show of I was kind of teaching everybody how to take certain bumps. There was one move I remember because I uploaded the video recently, and there was one thing where I told you guys how to do it, and all of you were like, no, you have to do it on the opposite side, and you started gaslighting me, and then I brought Troy Mast in, who confirmed that the only one who had been professionally trained, was actually correct. But then Troy Mast gave some great advice where he just like sat there with his hands in his pockets and was just like, he's just telling us, he's just like, the thing you're most afraid of is just taking that bump. That's what you're most afraid of. That's your fear. That's your fear. That's your fear. You're going to land on your elbows.
No landing gears.
You're going to land on that landing gear.
Yep.
That's your fear. So, yeah, there was a lot of that.
Yeah, I don't think there was much else to tell about that trip to Mast, but other than that, we were really considering doing something.
Yeah, it was like a whole lot of like, hey, let's see creatively we really want to do something. Hey, let's see if physically we're like, oh, we still kind of want to do this.
And we came out of that realizing that physically we couldn't do it, and yet we went ahead anyway.
But no, it was really cool. Also, like, I remember at that time period, when we started thinking, okay, well, how do we want to do this? How do we want to do this differently? That's when we were like, we're going to do this. We're going to bring this back. We made that decision, and we confirmed with certain people. And I remember I talked to Andrew Sagan, and he was like, I want to wrestle. And he said to me, he's like, I want to wrestle you. It's like, we never did that, because you have to remember at the time and everything, Andrew was like my best friend in high school, and he and I talked about wrestling more than I was talking like with you guys. Like, for instance, Mangle and I didn't become closer until college. So, and I wrestled Mangle all the time, but Andrew and I always talked about wrestling, always dreamt about wrestling, and never wrestled each other. So that became like very quickly, like, that's on our bucket list of things to do here, which was, I think, what kind of played a role in we need to come back. Because it very quickly was like, well, we'd come back for a one-off show. Who are you going to wrestle? Oh, well, obviously I'm going to wrestle Mangle. But I'd really like to wrestle Andrew. And wouldn't it be cool if I could do something with this guy and with that guy? Like, and that's when it started to become this like, well, then we should just bring it back so we can do all of these things.
So I remember you coming to me, and I don't remember the exact context, but so Josh said to me, at this point, Josh and I were living together. We had a townhouse, and remember you saying to me,
"Yeah, you went down. If you went down Bristol, and we're still not interested in."
Little local.
Yeah.
And I remember Josh said something like, he said, I think we can really do this. And I remember at this time I'm in business school, and I'm thinking like, trying to think like a business person, and I'm just like, I don't see. I remember saying to you, like, why is there a need for this? Why is there and what makes us different? And you're like, we're just better. When people get a glimpse of like what we can do, like we were always better than a lot of these indies on no budget, and if people see what we can do, they'll appreciate that we're better. And I say, but what differentiates us? There's so much competition out there already, and this was in many ways in a lull in the wrestling business. I mean, TNA was doing really well in WWE, obviously, but I think overall in the indie scene, there wasn't a lot going on.
It was really dead, except for Ring of Honor, and Ring of Honor was already having a bit of an issue because of TNA.
And they had all their stars.
Yeah.
You
know.
Yeah. So I was very opposed to it, despite the fact that I admit that like the appeal of it was always, I missed being part of the business. I missed running the shows. But I just thought this was not going to go well. And then for me, what started convincing me a little bit was, I think I talked about this, I guess, last time, that Rob Dimension had done a segment. I'd done a few segments with Mark Mast, and on his company's show, and it was streamed online, and it was funny. It was really entertaining, and I thought I liked that part of it more than the wrestling. I was like, just to like create television in a way, and just create funny characters and entertaining storylines, and like I was like, you know what? If we could be more entertaining than a lot of the indie stuff out there, maybe that's the thing, because finally, after we tried since 99 to get on the internet and all these things, finally internet television is a real possibility, and through YouTube and everything. This is a different era. And I said, you know, maybe we can hook people. We can come up with something that, this is to give you a sense of when this was. People talked about things going viral. That was already a thing. And I was like, we can come up with some commercials that could go viral. And I remember one of our early ideas that we wanted to do it, and we never did, was that
just the pandas.
Something to do with the panda, because WWF had become WWE because of the panda, the World Wildlife whatever, and so
like 4 years earlier.
4 years, yeah, very very topical. And we were gonna have Big Lou gore a guy in a panda costume. Yeah. Like it was just gonna be this random, like intentionally ridiculous things that we were gonna throw up on YouTube to make people and tag it for wrestling stuff that people are gonna take note and go like, what the hell is this thing? And then
right. That was our intention, right? That we would introduce characters that way. That would be Mangle.
In the most
Mangle
like
does a big boot
viral,
to some random, like it was little things like that, just so that people are just like, "Did you see this video? What is this random thing?"
But, so to everyone who's listening or watching right now, some of you may be thinking that's a great idea. Some of you might be thinking that's a terrible idea. But you should know that either way, we didn't do it.
Yes, and we didn't do it because we didn't have the means, and that was the same. Everybody takes for granted what we have today. Like literally today, I could hand my phone, Calvin could have his phone, Fred could have his phone, Mangle can't have his because it's a Droid, but we could all use our iPhones, and there's your 3 cameras around ringside, 1 stationary, 2 roaming cameras, and hands down, not even a conversation, the quality would be mind-blowingly better than what the best at home, what's the word I'm looking for, consumer camcorder could provide back in 2006. So again, you're looking at a time where like we had these great ideas. Well, okay, we can't, like the idea of this light behind me and behind Mangle and behind Fred and Calvin doesn't have his because he's too lazy. But like if you know the there is a light. What is that? There is a random light shine. But you muted yourself.
It's blue. It's the blue light.
Okay. I don't see it. But I digress. Something like these lights that we have there are like, those weren't, the idea of having something like that back in the TWF days would have blown our minds. The idea of being able to have a backstage interview where, you know, we used to do all the stuff in the back of the shopping center We've talked about that in the past. Had we had one of these lights, like look at what Mangle has there, and had that been, which I think is probably the same one, we all have that same one, but we had that one uplighting on one brick wall in the back there, would have looked so badass.
If you watch WWE's programming right now, their backstage segments, they will bathe the back in the backstage area, either in like blue or purple.
Yeah.
Or red.
Yeah. Which in some ways is a little too much. It looks way too staged for their, like, we're just walking around backstage and there happens to be lights everywhere. But it looks great for, like, the backstage stand-up interviews and stuff, But a perfect example of that. Everybody on here who's watching this is probably familiar with the viral videos of myself and my good friend Matt Cardona. Calvin Tan films those on my phone. That's what we film them on, because the low light setting is incredible. The ability to instantly get that onto the internet is super easy and everything.
The stabilization
is fantastic. We have different cameras and stuff when we're doing different stuff, but to do those backstage things, those are shot on an iPhone. Obviously we have a connection to an actual microphone and whatnot. But my point is, we are able to do things today that, like, the technology just wasn't there. We never ended up doing those.
So that was the original idea, and that was kind of part of what sold me on that maybe this could work. But there were a lot of things where I had a lot of other concerns. I don't know. I don't want to, before Josh, you and I jump into what's coming next. I don't know if Matt or Calvin, if you remember anything about when we were first, like, talking up, getting back into this.
I don't think I was really involved in the talks to bringing this back.
Calvin was not really.
I remember Calvin saying you got to have a business plan. I remember that.
Yes. Yeah. I remember sitting up top of the Starbucks.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you had your all of us had our relative notepads, but you were talking about marketing and how would we market, how would we give tickets, and
I got business plan software on my laptop, and we were working through, like, answering questions about things.
Yeah, you were using it. You were going to use it also as, like, your project.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
For your MBA. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was.
I did end up using.
I was busy. Yeah, I think I was busy into my journey into the magic world at this time.
2006.
Sounds
You
about
definitely,
right.
you
Yeah.
were. So that, to jump ahead a little bit, somehow we're how can we do that? How can we do that? What we realized was we needed a license, and I didn't want to go through the process again of having my own license and dealing with State Athletic Commission. I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted to just rent a license from someone. And who did we know? Who was our hookup? The Rockin' Rebel. So this is the point where, how do we say this nicely? The guy was a horrible human being.
Well, let's give some backstory to him, because I don't think a lot of people, especially from, like, the Attitude Era and on, know who he is.
Yeah, so he was technically, he always billed himself as an ECW original. He was from the Eastern Championship Wrestling days. And he wrestled he was there the night the line was crossed. He was on the card, I believe. Like he
feuded with Sandman. He had
he was a worker, a brother,
crystal meth brother,
a little limp fish handshake while the other one's probably the other hand's taking your wallet. Like he was
shave your armpits. Shave your armpits.
Right. I didn't shave my armpits in 2002. We had that triple threat match, and I go up on the top rope, and I'm up, arms at, and he's like, shave your armpits. I remember, like, he was, like, heckling from the crowd while he was also there for the State Athletic Commission.
Probably shaving his armpits in the crowd.
I remember thinking to myself, what a strange world, because, like, I can't think of any other scenario in the rest of the world where I would have lifted my arms and someone would have gone, shave your armpits. I could think of a lot where someone would have gone, dude, you shaved your armpits, right? but only that's the beauty of the wrestling business. How many weird things are there that it's like,
oh, you're not a tough guy unless you work the armpits, you know?
Yeah, right. Oh, you got it. So we knew Rebel through that, and him helping us out with a state.
We'd had a terrible bunch of experiences with him with what we talked about at Colonial Elementary, where he was causing a scene in the parking lot, and
anti-Semitic slurs,
what
stuff.
May or may not have gone on. We don't know because I think none of the four of us actually witnessed it, but we heard reports that he was causing a problem
from the same exact report from enough different people, from friends, family, other indie wrestlers, people who didn't know each other, were all providing the exact same story, which made us feel pretty comfortable in knowing that that's what he did. But
so you imagine my excitement when Josh tells me that he's got this great idea to cut costs and operate efficiently. That he's had preliminary conversations with the fucking Rockin' Rebel, and Rebel. Josh, go ahead. What did the deal comprise of?
We would book, I want to say 6 shows. We agreed to do 6 shows. I don't remember how much money it was for.
I do.
It was not a lot.
Mangle does. How much?
For
$100,000.
$1,000
a show. It was $1,000 a month.
Show.
It was $1,000 a month, Josh.
Was it?
And
really?
he was going to try to, because he was.
Well, I guess that was to rent the the place.
Mm-hmm.
And
for the rent.
include,
well, you know what? And here's the thing. You're right. It was $1,000 a month, which we looked at and said, that's an incredible deal. And here's why. Mm-hmm. The ring, when we used to rent the ring from Mast, was minimum $500. I remember it was always, that was $500 unless there was like something else and there were like truck issues or whatever. $500. Right off the bat, the ring's included. So there you go. We've now paid for the ring. We never had a venue, with the exception of Hilltop, where they gave it for the first show, where they gave it for free. We never had a venue that came close to $500 for the venue. Not to mention, this also covered all costs related to the State Athletic Commission. Mm-hmm. So, and
him working the show.
And he would work the show. And his students would work the show. Right. So removing Rebel being a garbage human being, scum of the earth, from the equation, it actually was on paper a much better, a way better idea than attempting to go back to the previous format of renting a place like Colonial Elementary
financially
School. So in my defense, that was good.
No, and I think everybody always understood that. I think financially it made sense, but forgetting as the story goes on, you can't forget the Rebel component of this. But taking him out of the equation, just the circumstances of it, and to give a little background into what Rebel was doing at that point. So he was living and working out in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, and he was running a wrestling company of his own, the Blackballed Wrestling Organization, BWO.
Should have been a red flag right there. And I remember, it's funny now with my friendship with the Blue Meanie all these years later, but I remember my first thought was, it's the BWO. You can't because he had spray painted BWO on the, and I'm like, that's like literally the BWO gimmick. What are you doing?
He had his school, the Top Gun Wrestling Academy, and he had his shows, and he would run. We actually went up there a couple of times, and we saw his students were working, and he had a nice turnout, nice enrollment, and we saw one of his shows. Actually, I think I remember.
So if I may interject,
Ray of Sunshine.
If I may interject,
yes,
on December 30th, 2006,
yes.
Part of our whole negotiation was kind of like, hey, we'd like to get back into it. Dave Sagan's never worked a match, and I haven't wrestled in a few years. What if we knock off some ring rust by doing a battle royal at one of Rebel's shows, but we do not want to show up to that audience that we suspected could become our audience one day as Rocky Styles and Dave Sagan. So instead, we were the frat boys.
Jeez,
it was one of the most enjoyable times I ever had wrestling, because it was a stupid battle royal. I was this over the top thing holding the red Solo cup. My hair was long at the time, so I had like a headband with my hair behind it, and like I had shaved down to this like pencil thin little like chin strap. It was horrible, but it was so much fun. A fun fact: the two shirts that I wore and the shirt that Dave Sagan wore, 2 years later, we would use those for Vishal Shah to wear on the hit web TV series Business as Usual as Ranjan Senaranjan. Those were the shirts that he wore, just buttoned up with like a tie. The shirts that we wore that night.
Wow.
Anyway, that night though, the show was stolen by someone else. Now, normally, guys, I try and dig up footage, and I, in post, put that footage in here, and you guys watch it afterwards. Today, we're going to watch it in real time.
Oh, God.
SpongeBob.
I believe this was taken by Matt Mangle.
Oh, Mangle was obsessed with this guy in the yellow, just ribbing him.
I believe Mangle.
That day, I'm gonna do it again.
Heckling him all the whole time.
So,
I kept saying, Mangle, the poor man has a weight problem. You gotta just.
So Mangle just
took himself out.
I lost my voice that day laughing at that guy.
Yes.
And then I had to shoot on fake Matt Hardy. I almost got in a fight with him. And I had no voice. So I'm yelling from the fourth row.
The problem. So I was not out there for this, although during intermission I was told about this. I had the privilege of, while I didn't get to watch him in the ring, I got to watch him in the locker room. And I would love to tell you, man, I had to see that man's penis, but much like him, I did not see his penis. He was naked,
Peter Griffin.
and he was Peter Griffin. The reality is that man was naked, and had he not turned around for all of us to see his buttocks, he could have, for all I know, that man could have been wearing capris from the front.
He had a cobra clutch on himself.
Oh, it was a bad situation.
An anatomical cobra clutch.
Bad situation back there.
Now, hold on. You see that man, you go, it's got to be yellow. And it's got to be SpongeBob.
He had SpongeBob on that. You couldn't make it out in that footage, which, by the way, a perfect example, as we were talking about, of what we had. That was taken on an actual camera, not on a camera phone, on an actual camera. Yeah, that's
people were watching me laugh. They weren't even watching him in the ring.
They were,
and I couldn't.
It was very cold. I remember. I remember that.
It was very cold. That's why the guy, everything tightened up and he looked so small.
But and you can't really talk from that video.
Tighten that up, Josh.
So the venue was some sort of it had been like, I don't know, a delivery place or something, like a bakery or some kind of thing. And Rebel set up.
It was, and then that gentleman went there, cleaned it out, and
it was very creative.
Hey,
Rebel set up the arena part in
like
the
a
garage
wet blanket.
and there was a loading dock, and he had what I really loved, like a built up aisleway, a raised aisleway straight from where you come out to the ring. And I remember seeing the place. We went up there to see a school and everything, and thinking, if we get to do what we want to do with this, it's a really cool, almost studio type environment that we could really do a lot with. So I liked that. But I remember I did say to you, Josh, I said, forgetting Rebel, I said, he's running his own shows monthly. So what is their incentive to promote us? And secondly, why, how many wrestling shows is the Phoenixville? How many shows are the townspeople going to attend on a regular basis?
And here was my thought on that. My thought, which, spoiler, I was wrong, but my thought was much like back in the day with like the territories, people would go to, it's Friday night. They're going to go to see wrestling, and they'd go every week and they'd go back. So my thought was maybe we could get that audience. Maybe I thought this. I thought if these people are coming out to watch Rebels promotion, these people will come out again a second time. The problem was, A, I'm pretty sure Rebel was discouraging them from coming. And B, they didn't know who we were. It wasn't really promoted. I did get to come out as the TWF champion in May of 2007 to his show and kind of cut that promo to say, next month we're going to do all that stuff. And much like everything with the TWF, it was a big like, oh man, Rocky Styles is back. This is it. And it's like nobody knew who I was. So
at the same time, I think what you told me was, I'm leading up to, I guess, how I came on board and decided that, okay, we'll go with this thing. But I think you said, look, this is kind of like a TV studio. We're kind of doing this it's a small crowd. We're never going to make a lot of money on even a sellout audience. And you said, but we're taping our show here. Mm-hmm. And it's about using this newfangled YouTube thing and getting the word out there. And when we get a following, we'll start touring around the Philadelphia area and beyond.
Right. That was
so
the thought.
That was the logic.
Literally beyond, for instance, beyond the grave. Like my thought was, we'll do this TWF Returns thing here. We'll do, which is what we called the show. We'll do Adrenaline ITV, Adrenaline Internet TV. And again, there was no Fight TV back then. But we thought we would do that on like our YouTube show. And then, which by the way, I don't even think it was YouTube. I think it was something else that we hosted it on. Because if it was YouTube, it would still be there. Maybe it was Blip. Maybe, because that's what we used a couple of... No, Blip was a few years later for Business as Usual.
I can't remember.
I know, whatever it was.
Everything ended up on YouTube, so...
Eventually, yeah, it was years later we put stuff on YouTube. So this idea of we would do these shows was to build up, like you said, where it was like beyond the grave. Well, maybe that's when we call Colonial Elementary School. That's when we go back there. That's when we find these other places, and that's our big show. That's our big payoff because we've been airing this, and So June 9th, 2007, TWF returns with a brand new history of TWF video, with new green screen shot footage that we had. And we kicked off the show. And do you remember how we kicked off the show?
Well, can we touch on real quick about who wasn't there?
Yes.
Because
okay.
Obviously, we were all us four here. We were back. Rod was back, and we repackaged him
back and better than ever. Honestly,
yeah,
the best version of him ever.
We packaged him as sort of an MMA fighter. And with a whole team around him, it was really cool. And we got, we had Mark Smart was back from the Well Hung Warriors. But so this is one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to really push the envelope a little bit with the indie guys and say that if you're going to work for us, you're going to listen to our approach and we're going to repackage you, because that we saw when we looked back, that was when we'd been at our best, was when people would listen to us and be repackaged.
Because otherwise we're an indie show. Otherwise we're just local no-name indie guys.
So Mark was, he was one cool dude. One cool dude, Mark Smart, OCD Mark Smart. And he was a character, heel who had a terrible OCD. and
tremendous. I don't care if it's considered by today's standards to be offensive.
Yeah, it doesn't age well, but he did such a good job with it.
Tremendous.
He was afraid of dirt. Nick Suave, who returned, was his manager, and Suave had to spray down and wipe down the ropes before he would come.
Clorox, like sanitizer,
which would play really well in this day and age.
That's true. Yeah, he's ahead of his time. A lot of, to give credit where it's due, a lot of the little aspects of that character, of the creativity of that, came from Matt Mangle.
Yes,
came up with a lot of it. I think probably even the name, but Mark Smart, man,
that's great.
Brian just freaking knocked it out of the park.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing. He embraced it. And that's, you always hear, like Bruce Pritchard will talk about, like how Terry Taylor didn't embrace the Red Rooster. Mm-hmm. I'm having a hard time figuring out exactly how he could have, but that's the difference between, like Bill Bane always fought back on the Baniac gimmick. Did a phenomenal job when he was doing it, but never wanted to. And it was like, to me, that gimmick could have just been huge. I mean, I say, as Bill Bane has appeared on WWE TV in the ring and, whatever, but still, that gimmick could have been huge. But we'll never know because his phlegemic was in front of it, going back to the guy in the yellow. Anyway,
but so we had Mark Smart. I'm just jumping around a little bit, but Mark Mast came back, and
Mr. Mast.
We said, previously we'd used Mast and his whole crew with his ring, and we said, so Josh actually contacted Mast and said on my request and said, we'd like to bring you in just as a worker without your ring, and we have big plans for you, and we're going to give you a slightly different look, and we want you to be this sort of this monster. And
are you going to the Mr. Mast or are you going somewhere else? Because we had another plan from first.
We did have another plan that I was not. Yeah. I know.
This was a Matt Mangle idea as well.
It could.
Mangle, take it away.
Imagine, if you will, a man of Mark Mast's stature, 400 and change.
A lot of change.
A lot of pennies there. Facing the crowd backwards, a brilliant rhinestone-laden robe, platinum bordering white, slick back hair, walks to the ring looking above everybody as if he's the second coming, and having people there kind of like a banana leaf and like the whole thing, feeding him grapes, like. Kind of like the Ghost of Christmas Past with the wreath and everything. How he's sitting there eating all the fruit and stuff, but not with the wreath and everything. But the magnificent Mark Mast, still 3M, still Triple M,
magnificent.
But the alter ego, magnificent Mark Mast. Never has there been a character like that at that size.
And someone's going to go, what about Adrian Adon? Nope. No, you don't understand. You don't understand.
It didn't come close.
And coming out like a magenta singlet, like just over the top royal.
Mm-hmm. It was a great idea.
This was 100% Mangle's idea.
It could have worked anywhere.
This was Mangle's idea. And Fred and I know we were all in on it. To the point where I called Mark Mast and said, here is our idea. And he was like, let me chew on it. And he just pretty much came back and was worried that if he did that, it would kill his gimmick elsewhere. And he didn't want to bleach his hair.
Yeah,
which I understand, but I felt like right off the bat, I agreed with Mangle's vision of it, and I just felt like that bleached blonde hair, that platinum blonde hair was it. Like, you take that away, it was like you take any bit of, you take that robe or that magenta singlet away and keep the blonde hair, and it doesn't work. You have the robe and the singlet and the black hair, and it just doesn't work.
You get him the gold, and no one takes it off him for a while. But he's like your JBL, but like in a different way. Like
it was great, But
It was.
we were giving him like it's like, hey brother, we'll give you a guarantee of like a solid $60 a month. You know, like, and you have to understand from his point of view, like if we had come to him and been like, and we'll give you a guaranteed $25,000 a year to do this, like,
He probably would have done it.
he would have done it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
anyway, so that didn't work out. So
we
then
went-
instead we went with, Fred was like, well, why don't we do he's like, I love the Mr. Mark Mast thing, but we're like, why don't instead we just do Mr. Mast? Because I was
kind
thinking
of a
like
Mr.
Mr.
Hughes
Fit
gimmick.
and like Mr. Fix It, you know,
Was it-
the Hulk. Yeah,
Beast
like that's what I kept. So I don't want to, you know, we're already at our hour point in this episode.
Yeah.
So I
So
want
I
to
want to
shift,
shift gears to and we won't go into too much detail, but so the people who did not come back. So because the main thing, there's a few other characters who just held us up for more money and it just didn't work out. And some of the New York crew wasn't back for that reason. But
Danny DeManto told me it's not 2003 anymore, brother.
Yep.
And
So
he wanted an amount of money that I was just like, it's not 2003, but you also have not done you haven't made a name for yourself. Had he worked? Had he gained experience? Had he been pounding the pavement? Absolutely. Had he been making a name for himself?
DeManto.
Danny DeManto in the business? Yeah. Had he been doing that? Yes. But he hadn't done anything that was going to draw. And that was my thing, was like, dude, if you're going to draw at $10 a head, if you're going to draw, you know, you want me to pay you $250
yeah, we didn't care. It was to us. It was
draw
it was
25 people.
Right. It was inviting it back. It was a courtesy that, you know, to us, TWF was like a family. So we were always going to include our TWF people if we could.
Kevin Matthews was like, when's he coming back?
There were two people that we really wanted, and that was Scott Fowler and Kevin Matthews. We felt that they had gone on and established themselves, still working on the indies and doing other things. Kevin had done a lot, and we thought this is a match that's never happened. We never got to pull it off properly before, and this is a feud that we really want to see. That we're gonna build the entire arc of this company is going to be built around them. It was, you know, in many ways a continuation of Josh stepping aside when Lee Harrison Styles was running the show and everything like that. That Josh, you said you're like, I'm not going to be after the first show or whatever. Like, I don't necessarily want to be in the main event picture. Like I want to have my role.
Well, you have to remember also, I had decided I was going to be a professional wrestler again, not just do the TWF. I was ready to be a professional wrestler and was in the best shape I'd ever been in at any point in my career. Was legitimately like ready to, I had actual muscle. I was legitimately ready to go. And my thought was, I don't want to be in the main event. Well, so there's another aspect of it. Mangle wanted to do a one-off and then wanted to do commentary. And that was it. Right. He didn't want to wrestle anymore. Until he had that one match. And then I believe at the end of the night, Mang was like, I was thinking, you know, I could probably, what if I came back with it? Like, and instantly was, you know, had changed his mind, which, welcome to the wrestling business. That's the wrestling bug. You know, he got back in that ring and was just like, yeah, this was great. But for me, I was like, well, good. I want to work Mangle. And then I want to work everyone else. I want to work indie guys. I want to start getting better and working, you know, working on all these other people. So that was the idea, but
so we had a lot of ideas for Scott and Kevin, and Kevin was a simpler story. He wanted too much money that we just could not make that work. I think at that time.
And I think he's signed with Deep South Wrestling or something.
Yeah, he was gone.
Or signed with WWE and went to Deep South.
Yeah. And Scott, I still don't really understand it, and I don't know. I was very close with Scott. We'd stayed in touch after the TWF ended. We were often talking through MySpace, which again dates this period of time. And
was he in your top 10?
I don't know.
And therein lies the problem. Problem solved. Kids these days don't know. If you weren't in someone's top 10 in MySpace, man, did that hurt.
Didn't measure up.
Man, did that hurt.
But it was my job to sell Scott on our idea. And part of that idea was that we wanted to sign him to a semi-exclusive contract that was guaranteed to a certain extent, and that we did not want him to work any other promotions within a certain radius. And he had a particular one with, I think his trainer ran, the guy who trained him, and that he really wanted to honor. And we said, okay, but we worked it out. He really believed in what we were doing, and we wanted him back. And then there started to be a lot of, someone in his family was ill, and he wasn't sure about this show, and he wasn't sure about the next thing, and he's not quite clear on what's going to happen. And we actually went into that first show thinking he was going to be coming later, that he just couldn't make the first show. And similar thing happened with Bill. I'm not really sure, but as I kept asking Scott, what's really going on here, and talk to me, and how can we work this out? And he kept making excuses and getting more and more defensive, that you guys don't understand what I'm going through. And it's just you're not being sensitive. So I don't really want to work for you anymore anyway. And it fell apart. I'm the guy who had been, him and Bill were so devoted to TWF, and we were very devoted to them, and he had honored us by wearing his Solution gear when he got the shot to do the jobber match on for WWE. Yeah. And I'd say really close with him. And that was the end of our friendship, and that was the end of his involvement with us. And we never really understood it.
I will say Scott watches this or listens to this show, and would love to have him come on at some point. We can talk
Absolutely,
about it. Not that he needs to share his personal business with anybody, but what I will say is it did, much like with Brody, we reached a point where we're like, all right, fine, this wrestling thing's not going to work out, but dude, we consider you a friend. What's going on? What's up? Yeah. We're worried about you as a person.
Which segues into John Brody, who you had made brand new gear for.
Brody was all on board. Brody and I got together in November of 2006. I hadn't seen him since April of 2003, the last TWF show that he was at. We got together. He came over. We went out to eat. A bunch of us, I think. So I don't know who was there, but a bunch of us were there. John had put a lot of weight on, and I remember that because he told me, he's like, dude, just get the pants big, get them really big. He said, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to lose the weight. And I'm like, well, we could get you smaller pants, and that could be your goal, to lose weight. But we got him actual wrestling gear, actual real, because he always wore airbrush sweatpants. We got him actual wrestling gear that I still have somewhere in a box somewhere. But it's got the kendo stick down the side, and it's pretty cool. But they were gigantic, and he way bigger than he ever needed because he wasn't that big. But comparatively to the scrawny guy that he was back in the day, I think he was very self-conscious about that. And then it just didn't work out. I think his brother's wedding was going on or something, and one thing led to another, and it didn't happen. And I had really wanted it for him, but I think he was at a different point in his life, and it wasn't gonna happen. And again, I'll say I hate to, air his dirty laundry, but he's always been very forthcoming about it. He's doing amazing today, and the dude's awesome, but it just didn't work out, and it sucked. And I always kind of hoped in the back of my mind, I always could hear the lukewarm John Brody music would hit at some point. I always thought there's always that opportunity. And even as time went on, we went into a thing with Lou and I working together, which we didn't call the Hardcore Clan, because if it wasn't with Brody, it wasn't the Hardcore Clan to me. But Lou and I were teaming up, and then Lou and I were feuding. And I always had this vision that eventually it was going to be Lou and I are going to be doing, it was going to be something, and I'm screwing Lou over, and that music's going to hit, and Brody's going to come out, and that's going to be, which would, I always thought we'd eventually go back to, if nothing else, we'd go back to one more match of me and Brody, to kind of bookend all that stuff. Yeah. And obviously that never happened. But we did end up, and I want to kind of blow through some of this stuff. Yeah. Pretty much, Mangle and I had one of our best matches to date. It was about 1,000 degrees in there. He and I were in great shape. Mangle was cut to all hell. The vascularity. God, Biz popped all over himself. Mangle was in phenomenal shape. I was in really good shape. And yet we were still blown up after that first spot because it was so damn hot. But we worked a really good match. I took Mangle out of action with help from Big Lou, which kind of brought me and Lou back together. From there, we moved on to doing our TV tapings, and I finally got to have my match with Vortex, which was terrible. We blanked on something in the middle, and it just totally fell apart. But later that night, we did, for the third TV tapings that we were doing, it was me and Lou against Vortex and Dave Sagan. And that tag match that we didn't pay as much attention to because we had other matches earlier in the night, a singles match and, stuff. That match, we just clicked. It just worked, and it was one of the best matches that I think we ever did in the TWF, and one of the best matches I was ever a part of. And there were a couple little spots here and there that weren't great, but that match was a really good one. And it ended with me catching Lou with a super kick and turning on Lou. Meanwhile, we've been doing these backstage things with Dave and Andrew, with Dave and Vortex, which was great. One of my favorite lines is when because they're brothers, Dave goes to me, he's like, "I love you like a brother, brother." And it was like just stuff like that. Like I remember just popped me so much.
They both really, really delivered. And Dave, I mean, obviously Dave's still in the business, and
that's an important thing to say. Dave Sagan, 2022 is going to be his year in the wrestling business. He was killing it in Texas. Now he's back east and training under one Matt Mangle, which is a great plug. You should go to personaltrainingunlocked.com if you would like to be trained by Matt Mangle, because that's what Dave Sagan's doing, and that's what I'm doing as well, getting myself back in not so much ring shape as it is being able to walk the stairs shape. But Mangle's an incredible trainer, very knowledgeable. Don't tell him I said this. But yeah, go to personaltrainingunlocked.com now. Some great subscription-based things that you can do, and you absolutely want to kick the year off right. Come on, go right now, personaltrainingunlocked.com. Anyway, Dave Sagan's still wrestling, but yeah, Dave Sagan.
Well, I was going to say that I ended up managing Dave, as this era of the TWF went on. Can I touch on very briefly my involvement in the first show?
Yeah.
TWF Returns.
Please do.
So I wrestled. I brought back Punch Fresh for one night only.
But not Mental Break Punch Fresh from 2003.
Punch Fresh. The real deal with the shirt and the whole gimmick. And it's like you said about like the bug, I just wanted to go one more match, and because Andrew Sagan, Vortex, was going to be coming back, and I had wrestled him in '99
in his final match.
In his final match, we thought there was a natural story there and an opportunity for me to have one last match and put him over to kind of jumpstart his career. That he's back and he's taking this seriously and all that. So I came out. I sort of actually opened the show as Lee Harrison Styles, as now just sort of like happy quasi heel Lee Harrison Styles, who's now going to be doing commentary. And the idea was that there was an in-ring appearance by Bill Apter, who was finally actually involved in the TWF.
He was the liaison to the
board of directors.
The board of directors,
or something. Because that was the thing, was that you and I had sold our shares to like some
like a board of directors
board.
Yeah, and Bill Apter became the
he's the face of it. Yeah. And he was doing something in the ring, and Vortex appeared and called me out, and we agreed to this one match.
Do you remember the story? Do you remember the storyline?
Oh, yeah, that after it was very similar to what happened to Drago. He lost the match at Armageddon, and he was kicked out of the country in
1999.
Fell into poverty, and he had to struggle to survive, and it was a whole thing, and he held this grudge for all these years.
Yeah, against Punch Fresh.
Had to learn perfect English.
Yep, that's it. He went back to Seoul, South Korea, learned perfect English, and was now back to
and he came back.
Get his revenge.
So we had a match which
was a really good match.
Said it was very, very, very a very hot environment, and I was sweating like a mother, and I was very nervous because we had to do a couple of spots that, and I was taking more of a risk than I really felt comfortable taking, because I just wanted to leave it all out there for this one shot. And it was slippery, like trying to pick each other up for things and all. But it went pretty well. I was very blown up, but he got the win by shady means, and that was it for my in-ring career. But it was a fun time. And after that, so I went back to doing commentary, and then gradually worked into being a manager, which I really enjoyed. And it started. It was on commentary that I became a big fan of the Dave Sagan character and declared him my pick as the future of the business. And then I started actually managing him.
And so the whole idea of what we're going to do here was eventually jumping ahead, because nobody really cared. We did a show July 21st, 2007. We taped 3 episodes. We did August 29th, 2007. We taped 3 episodes. At the end of that one, we discovered that Lou and I were going to face each other at Beyond the Grave, and there was going to be a special guest referee, and that's when Mangle stood up, got into the ring, and wearing his nice stretchy silver shirt. And
I still have that.
Yep, and he flexed at me. I got scared, turned around, got gored by Lou. It was great. Show went off the air with Mangle yelling at me, and I'm like looking up from outside holding my ribs, and Mangle's like yelling like, what now, or whatever it is. And that was my final appearance in the TWF. The plan was that Lou was going to beat me for the title, and that I was going to realign with Fred. And Fred was going to create a group. Mangle was then eventually going to turn heel on Lou, and Fred's group was going to be called, and mind you, this is in 2007. It's going to be called The Elite.
That's right.
And it was going to be Fred managing me, Mangle, Scott Fowler, and Big Papa, who we had talked with Noah about coming back as well, and he was kind of interested or whatever, and Dave Sagan. So it was pretty much going to be every former world champion, and then who Fred deemed the future, which was Dave Sagan, and Fred was going to bring back out of retirement as the first ever Pennsylvania champion, was going to bequeath, if you will, the Pennsylvania title.
Who did what?
Yes, he was going to hand the Pennsylvania title to Dave Sagan, and that was what was going to bring the PA title back into circulation, because we didn't bring it back with Big Lou. We didn't bring back the tag titles because Danny DeMantis stole one. But that was the idea.
That was the plan.
That was the plan, and we would be having pretty much Lou was going to work his way through having he was going to take the title off of me, which was then going to be this big celebration until Mangle turned on him, because Mangle was pretty much going to be like, I sat there in because remember, Mangle was sitting in the booth as an announcer because Big Lou interfered and took him out for me to win the title at TWF Returns. So now Mangle was going to join with me to go again. It was going to be this whole thing that was our whole plan. Yeah. Instead, I got an IM, an AOL instant message from one Kevin Keenan, former wrestler for the TWF, now a referee down in Ohio Valley Wrestling and for the new ECW brand on WWE TV. Pretty much saying to me, "Hey man, how's it going with TWF? Yeah, what are you doing? What are you doing there? Come down here. You want to be a wrestler? Come down here." And one thing led to another, and as I said, that August 29th show was my last show, because by the middle of September, I was headed to Louisville, Kentucky. The only return that I would have in that time period was we did do a show at some point, I want to say in October, we did Beyond the Grave, that I came back for but did not appear on camera or in front of the crowd. But then October 5th, Matt Mangle and I, October 5th and 6th, this is in the promo. And maybe if I can find that promo, I can...
it's on there, Josh.
I'm Matt Mangle, former World Heavyweight Champion in the TWF, former World Tag Team Champion in the TWF. I've wrestled many different opponents over 8 years with that federation. I've been around. I've wrestled in different states, thousands of different matches. I've wrestled this man, Superstar Rocky Styles, more times than I care to remember. I've wrestled him in ladder matches. I've wrestled him in 2 out of 3 fall handicap matches. I've wrestled him in hardcore matches. So many damn matches, I can't even remember them all, like I said. This man, I hate this man. But somehow, some way, Mr. Bill Apter, the new authority in the Wrestling Federation, has decided, oh, let's put Mangle and Superstar Rocky Styles together to somehow coexist to compete for the AWA World Tag Team titles on October 5th and 6th. 2 polar opposites as far as personality and wrestling goes. Somehow we're supposed to coexist and win the titles and represent the Wrestling Federation. Now, I've been a World Tag Team Champion before, so I have no problem carrying this man to the top and getting the victory.
Carrying me. I'm sorry, is it the World Championship, the enormous gold belt on my shoulder? Is it the fact that I'm a 4-time World Champion, the longest reigning World Champion in TWF history? Or is that something that makes you feel that I need to be carried? I'm sorry, let me tell you a little bit about carrying people, okay? I carried Big Lou on my back. You can check my vertebrae. They're practically cracked into a billion pieces from carrying his big fat ass for so many years. But I carried him until I kicked him in the face. And now, Bill Apter decides that I need to face him at Beyond the Grave October 20th. Okay? So I'm supposed to be facing him with, who's the special guest referee? Alright, it's you. So suddenly now I'm supposed to be trusting you. You're the special guest referee for my match against Lou for my World Championship. And now Bill Apter thinks that we're going to work as some cohesive unit together to go for the AWA Tag Team Championships. I don't need Tag Team Championships. I'm the World Champion. I'm the best. Okay? I don't need that stuff. I don't need you. I don't need Bill Apter. I don't need Big Lou. I don't need the AWA. I really don't need that. Okay? I am my own star. I am my own superstar, a shining star that goes so high into the sky, and I don't need this. Okay? I have pressures. I have stress in my life, Mangle. Okay? That maybe you and maybe the people at home can't really respect or appreciate because they're not on my level. Okay? But I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay it out for you right now. All nice. I'm going to package it up with a nice little bow so all you people can understand what I'm saying. I'm going to team with Mangle, okay, because he can be the yin to my yang. Yang's always been better than yin, for the record. And I'm going to go there and I'm going to become the AWA Tag Team Champions. I am going to become the AWA Tag Team Champions. I will have one belt here. I will wear this belt around my waist, and I'll carry the other one over here. Okay? And I'm sorry, that's 3 things, so it's going to be difficult for me to be carrying you, a 4th thing, on my back. Alright, so you leave it to me. We're going to go there October 5th, October 6th. We're going to go, and we're going to become the Tag Team Champions. Why? Because I am what I say I am. I am what you know I am, and I am what each and every one of the people in the AWA and all around the world wish they could be, and that is amazing. So says the superstar.
This is exactly what's going to hurt us in our match. That's why you need me to carry you, because I've done it before, and you're clearly too stressed out. So don't worry, I'll take care of you and hold your hand as I single-handedly win the tag titles, and I'll wear both of them just so you don't have to worry about
how are you going to single-handedly do it while I'm single-handedly doing it? You can't have 2 single hands.
I'm the captain, I'm better than you, and that's the way it is! Yeah!
He's better than me.
See ya!
I already said so says the superstar. That's what's supposed to end these things because I'm the champion. I get to decide when so says the superstar. I'm going to be the next AWA Tag Team Champion. I don't need you.
Mangle and I weren't supposed to team together. Well, we were originally supposed to team together, and then I got word from OVW, they're not going to be thrilled that you're training here, but you're also going. And I was like, that's kind of weird because it's not on TV and it's in Wisconsin and not Louisville, but whatever. And then Dave Sagan was going to step in, and then he got a little gun shy. He got nervous about it, which looking back on it now, you can understand. He really didn't have very much experience at all, but he got very nervous about it. And I had my gear with me, kind of in hopes that Dave was going to get nervous and I was going to have to, I guess I'll have to do it.
And this time, unlike when you and Lou were on the Indies, I was asked to be your manager, and you guys expected me to manage you, and they said no managers. There's not enough room in the locker room, and I was then asked to run the camera for the show.
That I have tried desperately to get the footage. I contacted various people, including Frankie Thumper, who Mangle and I wrestled, and he did not have the footage. And but he said it was a nice trip down memory lane. when I sent him pictures of it. But we wrestled Frankie Thumper and Jake the Milkman Millman, some real journeyman wrestlers. And that was when Mangle and I got called into the coat closet and to go over the match. And Frankie Thumper hit us with the, he's like, yeah, we'll go in here, do a little bada bing, bada boom, waltz around Texas, slip on a banana peel and bring it home. And he's like, are we good? We good? And Mangle and I are like, yeah, man, we're good. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. He walks out of that. Mangle and I turned to him and was just like, do you have any idea what the fuck? He's like, no, I have no idea. I have no idea what we're doing. I don't know what we're doing at all here. Like it was, but that was seriously, I always remembered the bada bing, bada boom, waltz around Texas, slip on a banana peel,
well,
and bring it home.
You get your shine, you get your heat, you shine.
You get your heat, you get shine, kind of. Yeah, it was all like, and we're like, I don't know, but we ended up having a great match with them.
Hey, look, Millman took the sharpshooter with the leg drop.
I put him in the sharpshooter, you hit him with a leg drop, and I thought he was going to turn to dust. Powdered milk.
Powdered milk.
Yep.
Powdered milkman. There's a t-shirt opportunity there, like
Slicker.
Powdered Toast Man. No, it worked out great. He took a high knee, hit me with a rather stiff forearm off the second rope, a la Lex Luger on the Mountie. Yeah, Ludwig Borga.
Oh,
Ludwig
man.
Borga still going around.
He's not
like
still going.
No, not anymore. Like a popsicle stick in a toilet. Anyway, but no, it was a good match.
We had
Very
a lot of fun in
memorable.
Wisconsin. It was great, and we kind of felt like finally, like we'd like done something, like you know what I mean, like bigger than TWF. And then I remember the show was so disappointing, the Beyond the Grave show. And then I remember the last show. I don't remember the exact date. I want to say November, but it was the same night that I was at an OVW show, OVW house show. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was on the phone with Fred, and I went outside to be on the phone because I didn't have good service, and it was very loud in the building. We had over 300 people at this OVW house show. And I was like, how's it look? Like, how's it going at the show, at the TWF show? And you're like, I think there's 3 people.
Yeah.
And I just, between what I had experienced before with like okay, I don't know who really wants to learn, like how seriously are they taking this, like moving forward while I'm trying to, focus on a career. And then I looked at it going, I'm paying $1,000 a month. And I'm looking at OVW and I'm going, this is what, it was impossible to stay in the TWF bubble that I had been in for, almost a decade at that point. It was impossible to stay in that TWF bubble and think that the TWF was important to the wrestling world while being at another indie show, albeit connected to the WWE, but being at another house show for OVW and hearing this roar of the crowd and seeing these people, how, I looked at it and I said, like, holy crap, we got to get out. We got to get out of this.
I mean, I think we all agreed.
You guys were like, we got to get this has to end.
So
Dave Sagan gave the Bob Holly I got an idea. Why don't you put the belt on me?
Yeah. So real quick. So obviously we had some successes. There were some things that discovering that Dave was pretty awesome. Was great. Lou was over like crazy.
Yeah.
Lou had hit his stride. Like he was, I mean, that guy could have been that, like Josh, you and I were talking earlier about something today. Like Lou at that time was just, I don't know how to explain it. He gotten very large. I mean, well over 300 pounds at that point, and he was not a particularly tall man. He was incredibly strong, and he was dressed kind of like Mark Henry. Yeah. And his personality was so great, and he was just so over. And he was this natural guy that people are going to get behind in like a Taz sort of way, that he's this small, tough guy who, like, the monster heels are gonna beat down, but he's never gonna be. You're not gonna stop him. He's just so tough. He's gonna keep going, and it just worked.
And even where he would be like, he's like, yo, yo, and holds up the mic, and everyone goes, yo, for his yo, yo, yo. It's Big Lou. The man had
he was a major success. Rod also, I think, we came up with a gimmick that really worked.
But then Rod had to go snowboarding or something.
Yes.
But don't worry, he'll be back. And I don't believe he's ever come
not back yet.
That was once again the beginning of the end. We lost Rod.
And I think that's my point.
Justin Cage no-showed.
Yeah.
And then that little redhead bitch was like, I can't stand watching these shows. I'm like, well, all your buddies, your Justin Cage, you're making your signs for no-showed.
Yep.
So we had to run the same matches.
We had to run the same matches. Right. So what I'm saying is it's not that we didn't have our successes during that time, but the old TWF curse kept piling on with people no-showing and screwing up our plans. And then on top of that, and obviously, Josh, you were seeing other opportunities for yourself, which was smart. And then on top of that, as we've been hinting at all along, there was the Rebel factor, which came into play in several ways. One was that he interfered with a lot of our plans. Sometimes it literally coming out, he didn't like the way that Dave and Lou were brawling into the crowd, and he would just start like making announcements in the middle of things. He had his guy who was doing the ring announcing for us would downplay our stuff. Instead of hyping our next show, would hype the next blackballed whatever show. And then obviously he was running his own shows in between and deflating the audience in that way. And then I think by the time we got to that infamous last show in November that Matt and I were put in charge of running, we had so many no-shows that we had to rely on Rebel about a week before. Had to ask Rebel to make sure that we could pad the card with his people. We're not doing a taping at this point. We're not doing anything. It's just a TWF show, but we didn't even know who half the people were. And I remember sitting in the locker room, and they had like an easel where they were writing the card out, and they had a guy called like Amazing Lou, something Lou. It was Amazing Lou, I think. But and someone was going over it. It was going down the card and was like, so we're gonna have Big Lou versus this one, and this one we're gonna have Amazing Lou. And he goes, how many freaking Lou's do we have here? And for whatever reason, that moment to me was when I was like, we've lost complete control. This is not our show anymore. This is like nothing makes any sense. And there were literally 3 or 4 people in the crowd, and at that point, I mean, everybody saw the writing on the wall. We had Lou, who was entertaining the possibility of coming out to like crash on your couch to train in OVW. Didn't end up happening.
I didn't even have a couch.
Well, crash on your floor.
He was literally going to sleep on my floor. That's what he said. But he didn't. It was just that last show was a disaster. I was involved in Rebel asked me to be part of some kind of segment with character people I didn't even know, where some girl slapped me to then set up something else. At some point, when was the end of Dave Sagan in that? Was it that show or the one before? It was that show. He did the job, and
Dave Sagan did the job
out the back door.
Dave became like one of our biggest stars. He was main eventing, and then he just burned out really, really quickly, and it's understandable given everything that we were all dealing with. And he asked to lose in the opening encounter and literally ran out the back, and his parents were waiting and took him away. And that was the end of his time. It fell apart so fast. It was unbelievable. I don't know, Matt, Calvin, anybody else want to chime in on that?
I don't think I was there for the last show.
No.
Well, that explains the problem.
Well, nobody was. No,
I think I was actually in like on vacation at that time.
Oh, nice. The show before that, I had to roll Lou over because he didn't roll for me to put him in my submission, and I basically this thumb,
right,
snapperoo cast, so I couldn't even wrestle the last show.
Yeah,
it was it didn't work. It was a failed experiment. They
ended up not even being a December show. Josh and I went up to meet Rebel and paid him a reduced price to not have the show.
Not do a show.
So that was the last that was the last TWF show of all of these versions that we've been talking about. That was the last one, but there was one more like spiritual successor. That there was one more time that we did our thing, working for a company that Nick Suave was associated with in New Jersey, which was like, when was that? That was the next year.
That was October 2008. The week before, the reason I know is because on the 27th, I wrestled Rich Swann in my final one-on-one match, in Rich Swann's first ever one-on-one match. But my last time in the ring as a wrestler was actually October 2008. And it was me versus Mangle versus Vortex versus Dave Sagan, managed by Lee Harrison Styles. I mean, a triple threat is bad, so why not a fatal four-way? I remember Mangle went into business for himself within the first 5 seconds, forgot what we were supposed to do, and just started throwing haymakers at everybody.
Oh, no, mate. No.
Yeah, not you. I got the footage. I got the footage,
Andrew
not
missed
you.
it. Andrew, there was something between Andrew and me, and it got missed, and then we just...
There was a miscommunication, yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
Andrew was supposed to come in, hit you from behind, do something to cut you off.
And he didn't.
But he
It
didn't.
ain't ballet,
so you just went and started throwing haymakers at everybody. Match fell apart. But last
Not
bump,
because of me, mother...
last bump I ever took.
Morad.
I know. It's less fun if you just say Morad every time. Oh man. The last bump I ever took, ever, in professional wrestling, was off of a high knee from Matt Mangle. That was the last bump I ever took. And at the very end, I remember looking to Biz, who was videotaping this on Mangle's flip gimmick thing. Remember those? Whatever those were?
Yeah. Flip video, yeah.
And I remember looking at the camera and going, I said something like, after I won the match, I choked Mangle out at the end, and after I won the match, I'm just like, I look around to the like 15 people there. I look at the camera and I go, how could you possibly leave all this? And I left. And that was it. What I should note was 1 week earlier, we aired the pilot episode of Business as Usual. So we had, as a group of friends, because at the end of the day, that's what the TWF was, and it's what the TWF is today, talking with friends. The TWF was us. It was us wanting to do something together. And at that point in time, we had moved on to this idea of doing a pilot episode of this web series and then doing a couple more. And then fast forward.
And Mike Green said you should do a lot more.
And Mike Green said we should do a lot more because he was going to show it to, what was it? Will Forte? Yeah.
Schnigel Floss or something.
Yeah. Fernum Durnham, Schniggles.
Snavelbaum.
But that was really it. We found something else. We found Business as Usual. We found this new thing that we could try to do as well as people with money while having no budget and no experience and no training, and throw it together. And
there's a common theme.
There's a common theme. And the funny thing is, the things I learned from the TWF, the things I learned from Business as Usual, specifically as it related to video editing and stuff like that, are the things that I use to this day with Fight and Focus on Fight. The stuff that Calvin, uses to this day as he's videotaping these things. These are things that we learned. We have an experience now when we're there at these live shows. And all of you have experienced this. Fred, when you worked with me backstage at AEW, Mangle, when you worked with me and Calvin at AEW in Vegas, and we worked at StarCast, we bring with us this unspoken understanding of how to be in a locker room, how to interact with other wrestlers, how to do, all this stuff that came from our experiences, both as wrestlers in the TWF, as entertainers, but also as the four of us being in the upper management position, if you will, of the TWF. We know what it's like to both be the one going, hey, what do you have for me, brother? And also being the one that someone's going to you going, what do you have for me, brother? Like we've experienced all of that. And I know for a fact, without the TWF, this wouldn't be happening right now. Us talk, obviously, this is kind of stupid. Without the TWF, we wouldn't be doing a show talking about the TWF. But without the TWF, we wouldn't be involved in wrestling in the way that we are. In the way, Mangle has a contributor to So Says Shernoff now, which if you haven't seen the Shernies, go watch the Shernies. Mangle, it's wonderful. And more to come. Fred,
if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Oh,
I was just gonna say, Fred does a ton of stuff. We've spoken about the stuff that he does for ad-free shows. And is involved in the wrestling business, in the stuff that you don't see, and and Calvin, of course, is referenced all the time, but is behind the camera. But everybody that knows me from all the stuff I do for Fight, all the people behind the scenes, all the people, all the wrestlers and all, they also know Calvin. And that's kind of always the funny thing of the person on camera you think is, Calvin is held in just as high regard as I am when we walk into that locker room. And so much of that comes from our ability to interact and be a part of these things, come from our just experience and our love for this.
And you know what? We never, and that goes to show you, because we never did it for the money. We did it because we loved it.
Certainly not.
Yeah. We did it because we loved it,
yeah.
And we gained all this experience because we loved doing it.
Yep.
And one thing led to another, which led to another, which leads us to where we are today.
Yeah. And where we are today is at the end of the TWF story, but not at the end of Talking with Friends. Because I think what we're most excited about doing now, we got a great reaction to Talking with Friendsgiving. And I think we have all this experience. And we look at stuff today. Fred and I were having a conversation earlier today about Hook, Taz's son, and a little bit of a debate about, how he's being used and how we're both big fans of his, but questioning certain things here and there about him and ideas of, if they should have done that or whatever. And we're all people who at least we believe that we have some form of knowledge. So we plan to be back every single month on Fight TV with a new episode of Talking with Friends where we will talk all about professional wrestling. Maybe we're going to talk about that pay-per-view from 1986. Maybe we're going to talk about AEW Dynamite from last week. We don't know what it's going to be, but we're going to talk about wrestling. We're going to talk about specific topics of wrestling. You can vote on those if you'd like. And before we wrap things up, guys, I did put out a thing if anyone had any questions for us, and we did get some people responded. So here's what we've got.
Well, wait a minute. You also
Yes.
did forget to include the time I went out to OVW to visit you.
That is true, but you know what? I think we're going to save that because
That's its own story.
it's its own story, and I believe Calvin Tan and I will be heading back to Louisville, Kentucky this January for a very special Fight and Focus there ahead of OVW's first ever pay-per-view. We are definitely going to have to do I'm going to be doing some sort of vlog, if you will, throughout the time there, as some bonus footage available at patreon.com/so-says-Shernoff, which, by the way, if you go to patreon.com/so-says-Shernoff, you can sign up to watch Talking with Friends early before it airs on Fight. Of course, So Says Shernoff early, and a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, like the little clip of us all talking about Mangle behind his back while he was fixing his Wi-Fi, and other things that you'll see, like the vlog from OVW. And I think that maybe the next episode might be a great opportunity for us to talk about what's going on down there in OVW at the time and reminiscing about the time that Calvin Tan did magic for
CM Punk during Mercury.
No big deal.
I think Chris Jericho was at a bar that we were hanging out with
his amazing smile. There's a
Jeff
lot.
Hardy.
There's a lot to talk about. And we will talk about that. But these questions here, one came from Ringside Rant. Who would win in a match, TWF or the Horsemen, and why is it TWF? So for this, I'm going to say the Horsemen can be any variation of any version of the Horsemen you want, and I'm going to say the TWF is us. It's the
I
four
assume
of
that's
us.
what they mean. Right?
Yeah. So why does TWF win? Mangle? Because I don't do the job? Is that?
Well, probably. Well, you would walk out. You would walk out. I'd hit somebody with something stiff. They'd get knocked out. They'd go out. So then we're down to 3-on-3. Calvin would be wandering around the apron as he's been known to do, and Fred would be yelling at somebody, tell him how to make lemonade, distracting somebody else. So then,
is this is the question about us and our respective heydays, or is it us versus the Horsemen now?
Well, God, I hope it's us versus the Horsemen now, because I'm pretty sure that even in our current conditions, we can all take any of the Horsemen in their current conditions.
That's what I'm saying. I think we have a chance if that's what they're going to do.
I would just take a handful of Viagra, throw it outside the ring, and wait for the 10 count.
I don't know. I think Flair could still go.
I don't know if I would want to mess with Flair. No. But anyway, and our other question that comes from Josh Rosenbaum here at Real Coach Rosie, what's been the highlight of your year? So I think this is a great way to kind of wrap things up here. Even if this airs in the new year, great opportunity to say, what's been the highlight of your year as it relates to wrestling?
Sure.
Fred, we'll go with you first.
Well, I guess I'm trying to think, because I started last year doing the cartoons, but obviously it was going to Huntsville, Alabama, where I was treated better than I deserved by one Conrad Thompson. Had a great time with him and Dave Silva and the crew. That was absolutely the highlight.
Calvin Tan, highlight of your year as it relates to wrestling.
Oh, I have a lot, so it's really hard to cut this down because this year we kind of came back from a lockdown, and I was able to travel again with Fight TV to various events. I would have to say I would have three things. So one would be being at my first GCW show. And actually being there when Matt Cardona beat Nick Gage for the GCW World title, and feeling the energy in that crowd, feeling kind of GCW taking off, getting that momentum behind them, that being in that atmosphere was kind of cool to experience that. The second one would probably, and that's where that happened with Matt Cardona backstage. Yep. The second one would probably be NWA Empower, when all the women, after the night was done and they were coming back to the locker room, everyone gave them a standing ovation, and Josh and I were at the end of the line. Just happened to be at backstage. Actually held the door open for them, and just feeling the emotion from that whole locker room coming back and what they just accomplished. So being backstage, that was a special moment that
really was a special.
Not many people get to experience that. So I'm glad I was there for that.
And then we went right from there to the bar with Conrad Thompson and Cassio Kidd and Dave Green, and had a taste of what Fred experienced in Huntsville,
in Alabama. Yes,
just a taste. What's your third one?
And I guess the third one would probably be I got to give back to some of the people that that I watch on TV, right? So wrestlers, professional wrestlers, they go out there and they entertain us. So I got to give back and entertain them for a little bit. I got to do some magic for the AEW locker room.
I don't know if I'd say a little bit.
I don't know how long I was going,
because
it probably was what was it, 3 a.m.?
Conrad recorded 6 podcasts while you were doing that.
It was late.
It was late, and friggin' Austin Gunn just kept bringing more people over every time. Calvin's like, "Well, I think this will be the last one here," and it's like, "Well, you got to show. Wait, come here. You got to show this." And then Calvin's like, "Well, man, I can't stop. Tony Khan's coming." It's like, waiting there for Tony Khan to show up, which he did.
Which he did. I had a pretty cool conversation with him. So yeah, that would probably be my top three, because there was just so many this year. But just feeling GCW, the feeling of the crowd and it kind of launching off, and then just being backstage for a historic moment, and the emotion with the the women of NWA doing that Empower pay-per-view, and then having fun with the AEW locker room and just kind of me performing for them, and putting smiles on their faces.
It's been a really good year for you.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Mangle, as it relates to wrestling, have you had anything interesting?
Other than just being able to do this with you guys, coming up and pulling some things out of this insane mind of mine and using it for your associate Shernoff as needed, and being able to start launching personal training Unlocked, and try to reach out to help people that are outside my area as far as geographic location goes, and kind of get that going in 2022. And yeah, man, see what you never know what happens in the wrestling business, but
you're gonna see a lot more of Matt Mangle, I think, in 2022 than you did in 2021 as it relates to wrestling. But
we'll keep both feet in it,
But hey, you know what? You were doing behind the scenes stuff, training Dave Sagan.
Hey, look, I'm working on like Dave. Dave, I've known him for a long time. He's taken initiative to not just take care of himself, but put himself in positions and with proper goals to get him where he wants to be. And I think the sky's the limit for him. He's got unlimited talent. His mobility has gotten tremendously better, more functional total body strength, symmetrical strength, which helps with balance. Just kind of really making him the total package. It's not just this, not just a solution, but really just, he should be able to do what he wants and not have to. He should be able to recover faster. Mm-hmm. Should be able to keep doing this for years to come if he's taking care of himself. So that's my job, to help him on that road, and keep you in the loop, and make sure you can do what you need to do, and wrestle the kids, and hit the high spots, and all bada bing, bada boom, waltz around Texas, living up banana peel, and
Mangle's the reason that I'm able to walk around for like 10 hours a day backstage doing those, like, the fight and focus things.
No worries, man.
If I had to answer, my what was the question again? The highlight of my year as it relates to wrestling, like Havin said, I mean, it's a tough one. I've been so fortunate to be about so many great things. There's opportunities that were presented to me behind the scenes stuff that I'm just very grateful for. But if it was a strictly like, I agree with Calvin of all those moments, the GCW stuff like that, but the highlight for me as a whole would have to be, from a fun standpoint, creating this rapport with Matt Cardona. Has just been so much fun and Calvin's gotten to be a part of that as well, but to just be able to, like, NWA, he was a surprise. So we didn't know he was going to be there until the night before we come down to the lobby to go out for sushi. And there's Cardona checking in, and it was just like, hey, what's going on? We're going to do something? It was just, like, we knew we were going to do something. And then again, we're backstage in NWA. He's like, we're doing something after this show, right? I'm like, yeah, of course we are. It's become so much fun, and it's actually even, actually wins a Shernoff Award. There's a little bit of a montage. So, spoiler there.
Wait, do you think that's why he didn't let you in on that sushi Uber Eats, because we dissed him for sushi that night?
Well, I think he expected us to meet him and just forgot to tell us where he was getting the Uber Eats. It's probably what just happened. But I mean, I know he values our friendship, and I value him. But that would be a highlight for me. But now, and of course, also this, talking with friends, being able to do Talking with Friends Giving, being able to do a show where Fight TV says, hey, you got some pretty good numbers on a show that is us just talking about stuff. I mean, there are literally the amount of people that have watched this show, one episode, is probably more than every attendance figure combined in the history of the TWF. So it's a very fulfilling thing to be able to do this. But we thank you all so much for spending the last couple hours with us, and we hope that you will be back each time we appear on Fight TV and on YouTube, and of course patreon.com/So Says Shernoff. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube, make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/So Says Shernoff, because this is Talking with Friends powered by So Says Shernoff. And for Fred Shernoff, we never know, maybe Fred's the Shernoff who's saying so. We don't know. Doesn't say So Says Josh Shernoff. Maybe one day that's what's going to be revealed. You know, it was me. It was me all along. You're the one, or it'll be some other random family member. But for Fred Shernoff,
out there.
there's a lot of them, but only 2 were involved in this show. For Fred Shernoff, for Calvin Tan, for Matthew S. Mangle, I'm Josh Shernoff, and we will see you next time on Talking with Friends.